Okay, let's start.
Dog or lamb?
Lamb, of course.
We ate chicken intestines just days before.
I remember this odd conversation we had earlier today as I lay resting in some structure reminiscent of a bed that feels far from it. It's a Claes Oldenburg bedroom ensemble of sorts, made in China. On the wall across from me hangs an original artwork. It's probably made at one of the many painting factories around here. It's a generic landscape. A painting that is instantly recognizable even though it's hung upside down.
At Guangzhou's Sun Yat-sen University Training Apartment Hotel, the receptionists, concierge, maids, and other employees are all in training.
I find myself distracted, considering whether to rehang the painting correctly or leave it as it is, and continually pressing the top arrow button on the TV remote control. There are no more than 10 channels. None of are in a language that I understand, except for one, the Weather Channel. It is in Cantonese, but aside from speech and text, the program features diagrams and numbers and other familiar codes that allow me to follow the unfolding meteorological narratives.
The first rain showers will begin later this evening. It's just the tail brush of a typhoon heading to Hong Kong. That's what's deciphered from the satellite images and the weatherman's inspired choreography. The city's thick smog transforms into heavy clouds.
As we enter the interior courtyard of this once Hotel Particulier and now landmark home, the industrial theater play of its creator begins. The house is known as the Maison de Verre, the House of Glass, its architect Pierre Charot. It is the home and clinic of the gynecologist Jean Dalache. He lived there with his wife Annie and their children. I remember seeing many things there, and as if its memory were played back as moving images in my mind, scenes begin revolving like the Maison de Verre's glass and metal doors, trickling in one after another as a light does in that space. Outside the house, a rail of stage lights for washing the glass in lights and blinding others from the intimacy of home. Our guide points out the new ones in the front courtyard and the original ones in the backyard. I think the front ones are shy, the original just right. On the ground floor, there is a doorknob that requires bowing down in a gentle manner. She tells us it's choreographed, a dance between doctor and a patient. Upstairs, a blue room for the doctor's wife has a hidden door to receive tea, and a tucked-in stairwell to the bedroom. The guide tells us it's a boudoir, and gives us its architectural history and the hidden secrets of its garden folies. There is a nautical reference in the boudoir stairwell, and some aviation materials in the circular biombo of the clinic downstairs. Electricity, machines, mechanization, even revolving doors. These are some of the things that influenced Francis Picavi and Eric Satie in their creation of the ballet performance Relace, and they appear to be grounding thoughts for the conception of the glass house too. The house's facade reminds me of Picavi's landmarks that designed for that ballet. While I doze with that thought, I wonder if someone has written about that possible relationship. I begin missing my library in New York and suddenly wish to be browsing the one at the Maison. The home's main bookshelf occupies one entire wall of the living room-like salon, which is flanked by the glass wall of the main facade. I recall reading that this room was designed at Annie Dalache's request to be, quote, big enough to house small orchestras. These were peak years for art and culture in the city of Paris, and the interdisciplinary work of musicians, poets, and painters of that era is still influential today. I've heard stories that the House of Glass hosted gatherings of artists and intellectuals of the time.
The most famous rumor is of a reading by Walter Benjamin, but apparently he canceled the night of the event.
Nothing of that kind seems to have been documented. I am unsure if these are myth or fact.
Set in the home of Madame Ornella Volta, which temporarily houses the archives Eric Satie. The house is dark. They sit in a living room. The entrance to that space has a rotating glass door with mahogany wood frames.
I thought that you could guide me in locating the mythical 84 identical handkerchiefs of Eric Satie, as I would like to include them in an exhibition.
Where did you read that they existed? Because, as you say, they're only mythical.
Oh, I read it.
Oh, nonsense. The handkerchiefs were never found, and I don't believe they ever existed. So tell me about the exhibition.
Well, I'm exploring the notion of disenchantment as a tactical break of a spell, a non-deliberate and emotionally violent form of awakening. This is considering, of course, that enchantment precedes a spell, like in magic, that enchantment is something like a postponement to reality or a suspension of truth.
I may have another idea for you, for the exhibition.
Okay, but wait. I just want to clarify that I'm not exactly talking about illusion here. That is, when I speak about a spell and whatnot. I think that during enchantment, the status of exception and originality are enjoyed, and that it is in disenchantment that the copy and the double are encountered.
And how do Satie's handkerchiefs fit into this?
Well, supposedly they were given to him as birthday gifts, each one, at his relentless suggestion. I like that this says about never being able to fully possess something. Ideally, this is also in tune with the sensibility of the exhibition. Have I mentioned boredom?
No.
It's a novel by Alberto Moravia, the Italian writer, and an influential text in the research process. In the novel, the main character, whose name is Dino, he's a painter, a born aristocrat, who has everything but longs for the one thing he's unable to possess, an understanding of his lover. He's unable to truly grasp his one fascination, so to say.
Anyway, I also like that in one of his most known musical notations, Satie writes something like this: I have put here everything I know about boredom.
Yeah, I like the tension set up between possession and comprehension, between knowing and having.
Perhaps I should bring that music notations out of the archives so that you can see it.
Okay, and you said you have an idea?
More of a suggestion. When you asked for the 84 handkerchiefs to include in the exhibition, I thought you can consider something else instead.
She brings a box full of musical notations. While they look at them, she discusses the writings of Satie and the design of the pages. They are unconventionally wrought and clearly thought of as works in and of themselves. She also brings a small box filled with miniature ink drawings that render a variety of things: an aerial view of a race car, a profile of what seems to be a train. They are drawn on paper the size of business cards and were found in a cigar box in Satie's apartment. There are thousands of these drawings, she says. They continue opening boxes, folders, and packages until she finds the one piece she had thought about since the beginning. It is an artwork by a Canadian artist named Robert Racine, a homemade abacus that he created to perform Satie's vexations.
He sent it to me sometime in the 1970s. Désiré Charnay's photography, diaries, and writing about his travel adventures during the second half of the 19th century made him kind of a celebrity during his lifetime. He became renowned when publishing his first photography expedition in Mexico, which took place between the years 1857 to 1860. This expedition preceded the French intervention in Mexico of 1862, and for that matter, Napoleon III's Scientific Commission of Mexico. Modeled after his uncle's research campaign for Egypt in 1798, Napoleon III created the Scientific Commission of Mexico in 1864 to map the land, study mineral wealth, excavate and reproduce ancient ruins, collect botanical and zoological specimens, assess human races and cultures, and monitor disease and public health. The Minister of Public Instruction and President of the Commission was Victor Duruy. In his correspondence to Mexican officials, he explained that the French had the ambition of conquering Mexico through science. Archaeology was an especially contested field in this commission. The historian Paul N. Edison recounts that Napoleon III got word of Maximilian's execution in Mexico at the opening of the Exposition Universelle of 1867, an exhibition that featured discoveries of the Scientific Commission of Mexico, including a replica of the Temple of Xochicalco, made under the direction of Commission member Leon Mejidin.
A replica of an Aztec temple was erected in the 1889 Paris World Exposition.
Leon Mejidin was a leading French archaeologist in France's Scientific Commission of Mexico. He was known for his stamping casting technique, a method of papier-mâché molding that he used to reproduce archaeological artifacts and building parts. This casting technique was inexpensive and lightweight and could easily be shipped to France in great numbers. The technique was learned by art students at the Academia de Bellas Artes de San Carlos.
This bit on the stamping techniques and replicas will be the subjects of research I'll conduct in the near future.
The expeditionary photographer, Désiré Charnay, also used a kind of stamping process in his expeditions, a process he learned from Mr. Lotin de Laval, involving papier-mâché molds used to cast figures with plaster Paris. Charnay, however, did stamping until his third expedition to Mexico. This trip lasted from 1880 to 1882 as part of a cooperative Franco-American project instructed by the Minister of Public Instruction in France. During this expedition, he met the English archaeologist Alfred Maudsley and taught him this casting technique. A number of Charnay's photographs, as well as casts and replicas, are in public collections here in Paris.
A recent art project by the artist Rubén Ortiz Torres brought me to research Désiré Charnay's photography. For the last couple of years, Rubén has been doing his own travel expeditions. He has traveled across the globe in search of replicas of ancient temples and recreations of archaeological sites and ruins. The project has taken the artist to a variety of places, in cities and villages in Mexico and the United States, to beach towns in the Bahamas, and to villages in Spain and Switzerland. Ruben's project is called The Past is Not What It Used to Be, and is materialized primarily in photography. The project can be generally organized in 3 parts. One kind of photography is devoted to contemporary buildings that are inspired by ancient temples. A second kind of photography gives focus to theme parks and amusement parks that replicate temples or entire archaeological sites on their grounds. Sometimes these replicas incorporate a design component so that visitors can, quote, interact more actively with the past, to relate to the ruin with a sense of adventure. A third kind of photography can be found in the project is of the meta-ruin, that is, building replicas that were active tourist attractions but that were abandoned at some point and left, once again, in ruins. Not strangely, this latter kind of site tends to be close to theme parks, which in itself is an archaeological subject of its own. Certainly, Rubén Ortiz Torres is not the only artist that has been influenced by 19th century travel expeditions in the Americas. In the mid-1980s, the Argentine artist and filmmaker Leandro Katz began a decade-long art project investigating the expeditions of the Maya region in Mexico and Central America.
Leandro Katz's project was inspired by the expeditions by the American businessman and diplomat John Lloyd Stevens and the Englishman Frederick Catherwood. Their first exhibition was in 1839, and the organizer and financier was Stevens. Catherwood's part was to render their findings, for which he used a camera lucida.
According to Beaumont Newhall's History of Photography, the camera lucida was designed by the English scientist William Hyde Williston in 1807. Drawing paper was laid flat. Over it, a glass prism was suspended at eye level by a brass rod. Looking through a peephole centered over the edge of the prism, the operator saw at the same time both the subject and the drawing paper. His pencil was guided by the virtual image. The camera lucida could easily be carried about and was widely used by travelers. Catherwood used the camera lucida in his first travel expeditions. His images were published in 1841 in the book Incidents of Travel in Central America, Chiapas, and Yucatan.
Just a note here, it was that book that inspired Desiree Charnay to begin his own travel expeditions.
For his project, Leandro Katz reenacted the travel itineraries of Stevens and Catherwood. Katz made his travels between the years of 1984 and 1988. He approached the site and the use of his camera methodically, producing very specific images. For example, for one kind of image, he adopted as closely as possible the same points of view used by Catherwood. In another kind of image, he incorporated a view of his hand holding Catherwood's published engraving in front of the documented monument, making the comparison of the subject in a single photograph. Leandro's intention with his work, which he titled the Catherwood Project, was to make an image that compare and contrast old and new images of the archaeological sites. But the so-called reality of these documentary images may be a pursuit for accuracy, not truthfulness. And this is whether we think of the originals made by Catherwood or the reenactments done by Katz. While Leandro Katz's interest is in the original archaeological sites and the reflection of the first printed images of these places, Rubén Ortiz Torres' project is concerned with a copy, and more so, it's as if his work traces a shadow that these ruins cast on notions of history as well as adventure. Rubén Ortiz Torres presents us meta-ruins, sites that may be based on history, but that are openly fictions.
I took this photograph some days ago at the studio of the Parisian artist Pierre Le Guillon. It's of a spread from an early 1970s issue of Harper's Bazaar. This is one of several magazines that Pierre is clipping for his retrospective of Diane Arbus at Cadiz in Paris. This art project, in the form of an exhibition, brings together images by Arbus appearing in magazines and American press. From a stack of magazines Pierre had at his studio, I just happened to pick this one up. In skimming its pages, I noticed a feature article by Bruce J. Friedman on earth art, a new form of art making at that time. The earthwork shown is by Walter de Maria. It's an earthwork somewhere in the state of Nevada.
That image reminds me of a satellite picture showing the abandoned and mysterious landing strip that inspired the recent construction of the International Airport Montello by the artists group called E-Team. E-Team's International Airport, Montello, is located in Nevada. Can the Harper Bazaar image give us clues into the history of the Montello airstrip?
This is different. Oh, let me, well, I mean, whoa. Let me rub my eyes. Is that me here? This is. Let me just say it's not quite the way I expected it, but oh my. Listen, I don't want you to get away. Whoa. Huh? Listen. You're at the International Airport Montello, okay? Let me give you coordinates. So you're surely welcome. you're surely welcome to land if that's appropriate to say that. I mean, you're surely welcome to land. I'm Henry J, by the way, and I'm the manager here at Juan at the airport. It's a coffee shop.
The windows quaked. Car alarms triggered. The image on TV changed suddenly to snow. It's the equatorial zone, and they assume the roar is thunder, announcing the start of a tropical storm. But now the sound is not of wind, but of helicopter wings. The clouds are made of smoke.
That thing we heard was the rumble from a bomb.
We're only on the 4th floor, I think. I choose to take the stairs, and there we are, only a handful of guests in this almost empty hundreds-room hotel.
Thanks, Chris.